Hello, and welcome to Out of Our Shell, the podcast with your two hosts,
Hi, I'm Amber.
and I'm Liv. Where the podcast is going to be bringing you some amazing guests, some great topics that matter to our community, and we're going to try to have a little bit of fun along the way. And speaking of amazing guests, this week we have adult entertainer Ashley Aspen. So, Amber, since you
Mhm,
invited Ashley on the pod, why don't you
mhm.
tell us a little bit more about our guests before we bring them on?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I guess before we even really talk about Ashley, like why she's on the podcast, we have to kind of go back
Mhm.
a little bit further into my transition story. So, in the very beginning, I had talked about how I was the first trans person that I had ever known, and that I didn't really
Mhm.
have any, great role models of, trans women or anything outside of what I was seeing on Jerry Springer and Rinky Lake and all
Yeah.
those wonderful shows. So for me, when I made the decision to transition, I mean, like, and especially as kind of an older person, there was a part of me that maybe felt like my body couldn't be loved, or that
Mhm.
I didn't have a body then that would be capable of being loved because it didn't fit into this like kind of homogenous binary that we have and everything. And so,
Yeah.
you know, for pornography, adult entertainment, it's so stigmatized, right? I mean, like we shove it into the darkest corners of the web,
Mhm.
but yet everybody's constantly looking at it in secret and in
Yeah.
private and everything.
Yeah.
And for me, it was actually very therapeutic to be able to find pornography where there was a person that looked like
Yeah.
me or resembled a body like mine, and was capable of being loved, was capable of being intimate, being sexual.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
for me, that actually like kind of like really was a part of my confidence in becoming the woman that I am today, and being able to be proud of you know my my sexuality, my
Yeah.
beauty that I was trying to convey out to the world. And so I didn't expect anything out of it. And I mean, like, this goes back to kind of me wanting to do the pay it forward thing. I would imagine, and I had no clue until I spoke to her, but I would imagine that, porn life isn't always necessarily a glamorous life, and you probably don't get a whole lot of
Yeah.
like genuine compliments being delivered to you. And so I
Mhm.
did reach out to her, and I thanked her for helping me along in my journey. And I was very surprised she actually
Mhm.
wrote back to me, and we had a really nice conversation when she was out here for the T Awards in Los Angeles. We were able to actually get
Yeah.
together, and I was able to pick her brain and everything. And so we invited her on the
Yeah.
podcast, just because I think she has such a fantastic story to tell. She can absolutely kind
Mhm.
of like pull the curtain back so that you can kind of see like what's going on in the industry, and like what the risks are for folks like that, and then how we could
Yeah.
actually help as a community to these people that kind of put themselves out there in that industry. So that
Yeah.
was really kind
Yeah.
of the, I guess, like
Mhm.
the why behind why I wanted to have Ashley on today.
Yeah, I know that you she means a lot to you, and I know that you have a
Yeah.
little bit of an extra glow to you when she's around, and yeah,
Yeah,
so
she's
are
such
you,
a cool person. She's so
yeah.
smart and articulate and everything. And I think that it's just going to be a really really great show today. And
Yeah.
she's such a unique guest to have on. I don't think that we get to hear so
Mhm.
many voices, from the fringes of our society, if you will.
Uh-huh.
And so that was something that I felt really strongly about when we were, coming together to do this podcast, was to make sure that we're representing all voices that have an opportunity
Yeah.
to speak on here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to
Well,
bringing her on.
all right. Well, it's going to be a long interview, I think. So, are you
Probably,
ready?
huh? I'm so ready.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
All right. We'll be right back.
Hi, it's Amber, your favorite podcast host. And don't worry, I won't tell Liv. Since we're still having a hard time finding actual sponsors for the pod, I wanted to talk to you again about our Trans Pride Apple Watch band for the Apple Watch. Last time, I touched on the fact that $10 from each sale goes directly towards the Trevor Project, and I'm happy to announce that the Out of Our Shell community has raised $3,000 so far. All of these dollars go towards the at risk services that the Trevor Project provides. Some of these services include their at-risk crisis counselors that are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I wanted to give those resources today for our listeners. Not only can you go online directly to thetrevorproject.org, but you can also call them at 1-866-488-7386. And if you don't want to call them, or you might be in a situation where you might need privacy, you can even text them anonymously at 678-678. So if this is a project that you feel like you'd like to get behind, please go out and visit us at Etsy and find out more at outofourshell.etsy.com, and know that your dollars are going towards a good cause. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the pod. Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. I am delighted to introduce Ashley Aspen. She is a trans adult actress in the adult industry, and we've invited her on here to kind of maybe shed some light on the industry a little bit and just kind of tell us a little bit about her life and maybe a day in the life of Ashley Aspen. So, Ashley, to get started, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm
Welcome.
glad to be here.
Absolutely. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your life? Maybe kind of like, let's just start off with like maybe how you grew up, like your transition, and just kind of like
Yeah.
how like your entrance into the adult industry kind of happened.
I grew up across the Midwest, mostly in Minnesota. Excuse me.
Okay.
And pretty normal childhood. My dad was an alcoholic, but other than that, pretty normal. It's a good school district. And out of high school, I joined the U.S. Army. I didn't do so well in high school. I think partially because I was trans and didn't quite grapple with that yet, but also because I suffer from, or I deal with chronic anxiety and depression. And all those things together are a fantastic combo for academic success, as you would imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I was in the active army down in Texas for 3.5 years and got married down there. And moved back up to Wisconsin to pursue schooling and be in the National Guard for a little bit. And I'd say about halfway through college, to which I was going for a degree in or BFA in painting and drawing. I just couldn't take it anymore. I was depressed. I wasn't taking care of myself, and I wasn't happy with myself or my marriage. So I told my ex-wife that I wanted a divorce and I was going to transition. And so I did. And so after school, in the middle of schooling, actually, I moved to Chicago. But shortly after that, a year or two, I was working for the Department of Defense and Human Resources. And at the beginning of COVID, they fired me for, I think they were being a little prejudiced because I was the only trans person there and the most liberal person and the youngest person there. But those are my suspicions. I don't have any solid evidence because I can't read into people's minds. But I mean, they always said I did great, and then they fired me. So I was devastated because I had already planned out my entire life. I was going to be like, I'm going to be in the federal service. I'm going to do 20, 30 years here, jump around to different cities, doing different stuff, trying to get higher up in the federal pay grade, maybe to executive level pay grade. But it was the beginning of the pandemic. I was devastated. And at that point, I decided I was never going to work for another person or company or entity in that kind of position ever again. And prior to that, I talked to another performer, Lily Demona, and she had talked about how good or how much she appreciates like escorting and adult content. And so I decided to dip my toes into escorting. And that was like the middle of 2020. And then at the beginning of 2021, I started doing like OnlyFans and porn, like studio shoots and stuff like that.
Okay. So I want to backtrack just a little bit. You were talking about how you decided you wanted to transition, that you were going to
Hmm.
divorce your wife, you were going to move forward. I would imagine that you probably didn't just like wake up one day and decide like, oh, total life change, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And you had mentioned that you didn't do well in school because you were trans. When did your, I guess, like kind of awakening, or were you just kind of always aware that you were a little bit different? Like, tell me a little bit about that, how that was like kind of growing up and going through school and everything.
Yeah, I don't know the exact year, but I'd say probably when I was around 12 or so,
Okay.
I was browsing through 4chan, and like it struck me for some reason, like, well, what if I imagined in my sexual fantasies I was the woman in these sexual fantasies,
Mm-hmm.
and that just like clicked with me. That
Mm.
clicked in my
Yeah.
mind. And then I was like kind of worried, and I researched it, and I was kind of frightened off by both the hatred I saw for trans people, as well as
Yeah.
the butt of the jokes, in popular culture, especially at the time. And um, and there was this kind of sentiment around the internet. It was either that, yeah, you need to start when you're super duper young, or there's no
Mm-hmm.
point. You'll never pass. You'll never be happy. You'll always be tormented the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Or there was like an idea that um, unless you were wanting to kill yourself, either if the options weren't kill yourself or you know have bottom surgery,
Mm-hmm.
if those weren't in mind, then it wasn't worth it. That was the
Yeah.
idea. It was like either you need to feel this extreme way, or you're not
Mm.
trans enough to transition.
Mm-hmm.
It's not
Yeah.
worth it or whatever.
Sure.
Um, and I had the feeling at the time, and I think I was still pretty correct, that if I had come out to my parents, I would have been ostracized, and
Mm-hmm.
it would have made my life very difficult,
Mm. Yeah.
um, or they just would have said no, it's not happening or whatever. And I can only imagine how, well, I was in a pretty liberal school district, but I still think it would have been very difficult to um, transition in high
Of
school.
course. Yeah, absolutely. Even now, I mean, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, well, I think it makes a huge difference on where you live and who you
of
surround yourself
course.
with.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I know that, I have a trans daughter, and we live out here in like
Yeah.
beautiful sunny California, and everything's super liberal, and we live in a fairly liberal county. And even with that though, I mean, like, she faces her struggles in school and everything like that, because it's just not normalized. There's too much rhetoric around it today, and even in the most liberal bastions, you're going to find those hateful people. And so yeah, it's definitely tough. So I can absolutely understand like where you're coming from
Yeah.
on that. So now, okay, so you've like literally been victimized by, your employer here. You've decided that like I'm never going to let this happen to me again. You go into the
Hmm.
adult business for yourself. How are you feeling about it initially? Like how are you feeling about these initial escorting visits? How are you feeling about like actually doing the OnlyFans? Like how is this like working for you?
I mean, when I started, I'll start when like how I felt when I started, then
Yeah.
how I feel now. But when
Okay.
I started, I was obviously nervous. I think
Yeah.
understandably so.
Yeah, of course.
Um, I was worried that like everybody's gonna find out. People are gonna like call me out on the street, or like
Yeah.
other things.
Can
And
I can I ask if you were out to your parents at this point?
I was, yeah.
Okay.
So my mom has always been very supportive. I
Oh,
haven't
that's
talked to my
great.
dad in like 5 years, but everybody else
Mm.
besides my dad and maybe my dad's brother are pretty supportive.
Mm.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was worried about these things, and then dealing with clients in person. I mean, even now, there's a very fine line between anxiety and excitement, and
Yeah.
so
Mm. Yeah.
there's a lot of anxiety and stuff surrounding meeting clients. And actually, um, the first guy I ever slept with was for work, um,
Okay.
and So like I don't know, it's an interesting thought to me that like I did it for work,
Mm-hmm.
versus I think most people
Mm.
first. I've had sexual experience with a number of women before, but not with a guy before my
Right.
work. And so that was interesting. Um, and so when I started uh, doing adult film, I
Mm-hmm.
was told by my pseudo mentor Lily that she said don't do it. She's like don't do it. And if you are going to do it just for because you like to do it,
Yeah.
um, because
Yeah.
of how difficult it is to earn money or a living off this.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, okay, well, I at least want to give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. And it's been very, very slow. And she was right. And I say the same thing to other people who want to get into the adult industry
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that you need to love the work or at least be very firm in the idea that either your work matters enough that you're going to put out a massive amount of unpaid work for
Mm-hmm.
this, and that like you care about your own work so much you want to share with people,
Right.
or and with that kind of I think every good performer, successful performer has or needs a sort of, I mean, not clinical but like a pseudo sense of, oh, what is it, like main person syndrome, what's narcissism.
Right.
They need a healthy
Mm-hmm.
sense of narcissism,
Yeah.
honestly,
Right.
because if otherwise you're going to be doing a lot of unpaid work to get your content and career off the ground. And I tell everybody that it doesn't matter who you are, how big, small, trans, not trans, whatever. You you can make money in the adult industry, but there's a huge but. The amount of money that you're going to make compared to other people varies tremendously.
Yeah.
Now, I want to pause you just real quick right there. For the folks that don't know, Ashley, you are, I would consider personally, you are a very mainstream trans adult actress. I would imagine like if you were to Google like trans actresses, in
Yeah.
the adult industry, you'll be on that list. But you're talking about the income disparity. If you were to take all trans actresses together, what percent are actually making a living wage for themselves if you just had to estimate?
If I had to
Without
estimate,
s and without escorting too, just on a
without
like
escorting,
yes.
I think 5% would be generous.
Mm. Wow.
I think that'd be very
Now
generous.
now obviously we see a like a pay disparity when we look in just
Yeah.
like the general working world between like men and
Yeah.
women. How, and obviously we know there's a huge pay disparity between men and women just due to demand and everything in
Hmm.
the porn industry, but what about cis and trans performers? Like what does that pay disparity kind of look like?
Um, so it's difficult to say, and I have to preface this. I have no hard data. I just have
Hmm.
little data points here and there I've gleaned from friends and other people I've
Sure.
worked with. I'd say escorting wise,
Hmm.
it can be pretty fair. I'd say maybe in general, cis women are paid a little bit less.
Okay.
But that said, I have plenty of trans women who don't make that much off escorting. In terms
Mm.
of porn, it's a little more complicated. Um, I'd I'd say in general, my people don't talk about their individual pay rates for scenes all that much, and I think they should. They
Hmm.
should be completely open about it. But I think in general, cis performers get paid a little bit more um,
Hmm.
than trans performers.
Yeah.
And but like that's not the biggest part. The biggest issue is that there are so few um, studios shooting trans porn
Right.
compared to cis
Mm.
performers,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that there's just not studio work. So you have to take control of your own sort of career and content and go
Hmm.
to like clip sale sites, subscription sites, camming, whatever. Whereas I feel
And
like
let's
with a cis girl, you could again, this is an assumption, but I think you could travel the country or even to multiple countries and make a
Sure.
living off just doing studio porn if you're successful enough.
Absolutely. That kind of brings me to kind of, I guess, what I wanted to explore next is I think so many people think like, oh, I'm going to set up my OnlyFans, take a few shots with my ring light, throw them up there and watch the money roll in. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. There's a little bit more that goes into it.
Yeah.
Can you tell me maybe like what's a day in the life of Ashley Aspen, and then like what you actually have to put into to develop like the content that you're putting out there?
Sure. So I'm just gonna go over like like my income sources. My income sources are
Sure.
be very general, are between porn and
Mhm.
escorting. Right now,
Okay.
there's much more coming from escorting than there is porn. With that said, I
Okay.
still struggle to make my monthly bills a good amount of the time. Sometimes I have a little extra, but it's a freelance gig. You know, you're a freelancer
Yeah, of course.
in this industry, and so it's incumbent upon you to save during the good months to kind of cover the not so good months. But
Of
anyways,
course.
so within the kind of porn subcategory, I do subscription site. I do OnlyFans as a subscription site.
Mhm.
I do clip sales, which is, like could be anywhere from 5 minutes to like 25 minutes sales, and people can
Mhm.
buy those individual videos on ManyVids. I do
Okay.
live camming on Chatterbait. Sometimes I used to do it on Streamate as well. And
Mhm.
then I also do sexting and video call service on Sex Panther.
Okay.
And in addition to that, I do studio shoots for like kink, reality lovers, groovy, and the like. And so I like the studio shoots because they're pretty straightforward. You're like on set
Mhm.
for anywhere between like
Yeah.
3 to 8 hours, and then you're paid a lump sum.
Mhm.
Anywhere between like 900 to 1200, or if you're maybe a big star, you could be paid up to like 3000, 3500, or something like that. But it really depends. Um,
Now, it seems like, and like, correct me if I'm wrong here, you're being paid this 900 to 1200, and let's say you're a huge star, you're getting paid all the way up to $3,000. I feel like, and maybe I'm totally wrong, maybe the money isn't there in the porn business, but I feel like that's a very small drop in the bucket compared to
Yeah.
what that video is going to make over a long period of time.
I think
How do
it's
you feel
another
about that?
difficult question to answer. I'd say in general, my feelings would be if they weren't making more money on it, then they wouldn't be hiring you. It wouldn't be profitable for them.
Right,
I think in
right.
general, uh, the want to take as much as they can and pay people as little as possible is always there within sort of this in our capitalist society. And
Right.
so I definitely think they could pay people more, but it would cut into their profits, and they don't want to do that. That
Of
said, they
course.
also have to, when you're dealing with a studio, there's a lot that goes into it, all the way from marketing, hiring subcontractors, the hardware for hosting the sites, all the legal issues, the insurance, the lawyers, the editing.
Mhm.
I mean, I'll go alone by myself. I can go over what I do, and then you formalize that into a business where you're hiring other people. The costs
Mhm.
just kind of keep going up. But
Of course,
that
yeah.
said, I I think the people that own these studios, which are almost exclusively male,
Mm-hmm.
cis
Mm-hmm.
men, they are living pretty comfortably right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us more. So I kind of interrupted you and like kind of what we were talking about, but talk a little bit about what goes into you having to produce your content. So the studios, obviously, they're doing all the subcontracting stuff and everything, but like
Yeah,
you're a one woman show. Like
I am.
obviously, you're
Yeah.
doing your editing, you're doing your marketing, you're doing the scene setup, you're doing
Hmm.
all this stuff. Like tell us about like what goes into that, and like, and I guess like even how you motivate yourself to get started to do that in the morning when you wake up, because you
Yeah.
are your own boss, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah, it can, if you think about it too much, it's a little overwhelming. But so within porn, especially for the subscription sites and the clip
Mm-hmm.
sales, I'm gonna like break it down. There's filming, there's the paperwork and legal stuff you have to do, the editing, the marketing, and the sales. It's like a whole business, uh, workflow. So within the filming, either I'm filming myself, which I hold my phone or set it up somewhere, and I just pleasure myself, or whatever, or it's with others, in which case we can still like do one camera, but a lot of times we'll use like two cameras, whether it be our phone or somebody else's camera, and maybe we'll have a camera person as well. And then you have to think about the lighting, as well as the different angles and how you're going to break down the shoot, whether it be into specific acts, or if you're going to do something more like POV gonzo. You have to figure that out, how the scene's going to flow and what you want to get out of this scene. And, as well as what everybody's comfortable with. And you have to it's a whole array of things you have to work through. And that can take a number of hours to do. And then in addition to that, you got to think about the paperwork. All porn scenes have to have paperwork verifying their age, which I think it's a 2257, and their consent. And they also have to work out.
Even you have to worry about having this paperwork on file, even if this is a non-studio shoot and everything. Correct?
Yes, that is correct. If you're going to publish it on one of these sites, then you need this paperwork, and it's getting more and more difficult with current legislation. These sites are asking for more individualized paperwork and documents for every single site. So it's becoming more and more difficult. And even like requiring it from stuff that was maybe shot years ago. If you have something posted, they're really, okay, well, we need this new documentation for this scene. And so what are you going to do if like the performer is either passed away or it just has, flown the coop, is off somewhere doing something,
Right.
Yeah.
And it becomes a nightmare. But like you have the paperwork, you have an ID, like a photo with them and their ID and the paperwork, and make sure everything's signed and dated. And you have to store that somewhere. Make sure you have a storage location for that that's secure. And then once that's just a shooting day. That's like the day of shooting. And we have the footage, and you shared it with somebody else. You've worked out the rights, whether it be, oh, maybe I'm paying you and I have the sole rights to this video footage, or it's just a trade, in which case we both get rights to the content, equal rights, non-exclusive rights to the content. And that's like the copyright, you have to work that out with the other performer and have it signed into a document. I forgot, you also have to get tested. And a lot of times, most of the time, the industry standard is a test that's an overnight test, like a blood draw, urine sample swab from like Town Testing, Clear, or I think there's another one or two out there, but those, they're overnight and they're only valid for 14 days. And they come with a little QR code that you can scan and verify that the test is legitimate. But a full panel of tests costs about $250 and is valid for 14 days. So if you're going to shoot all month, you're going to be paying $500 a month.
Per person.
And so once that's done, paperwork, tasks are good, you have editing. You have to edit everything. So like organizing the files, because you're going to have a lot of files of a lot of different stuff from different times. You have to back up the files. So if your hard drive goes down, you don't want to lose this footage that you spent so much time on. So personally, I use the cloud. I use my local computer if I'm working on it. And I also have a cold storage on hard drives. And then, so editing, I go through the time, like I'll break it up into little chunks, and I'll rearrange it to make it look good. The sound is another, to make sure the levels are good. Color correction and grading, to make sure like it's not too flat, but not like overblown and, super bright. You have the effects and titles if you want to add effects. I don't really add effects because most people don't care. But I always add a watermark, so when my stuff is inevitably pirated, at least they'll have my website to go to, maybe if they if they feel generous. And then from that, once you're done with that, I take promo images, like still images from it, save it to a file, and I'll take like 5-second video clips from that as well so I can post. And after that, once you have those, I'll output the actual video file to multiple formats and different compression levels depending on the site that I'm uploading to, because they all have slightly different requirements and file sizes that they allow on the sites. And once you're done with that, you have the uploading. You have to upload it, tag it, upload the performers, write a description. You have to figure out what price you want it to set at. And once that's done, you got marketing. I use social media for most of my marketing, like Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, RedGifs. I stream on Twitch for gaming, and with some hope that, it'll send some people to my content so I can make some money. And then you have tube sites like Pornhub, as well as my personal site. I'll occasionally write like a blog post and stuff like that. And then you have like interviews like this. This could always draw in some people. And I
This
consider
is gonna be a huge interview. It's just gonna blow up. Yeah, we're gonna send so many people out to ashleyaspen.com, right? Is that it? Yes, ashleyaspen.com. Yes, absolutely. Go there, support her. Thank you for being on the pod. Continue.
Yeah.
And then I consider free cam sites like Chatterbait a method of advertising as well, because I earn money on there, but there's so many people, so much traffic coming through there that I want them to see me and then like, well, maybe I'll check out her stuff and then go buy my stuff or check it out. And so I consider that part of marketing. And once you're done with all of that, you still you have sales, whether it be messaging people, replying to people, negotiating prices for custom videos, live chat, video chats, etc. All of that stuff, is incumbent upon me.
Can I?
Go for it.
Can I ask a question real quick? So I just wanted to. So in the beginning of this, you said that your two main income sources were escorting and porn. Does the subscription aspect of it go into the porn, or is this a separate entity? Porn. Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious because I'm like, this is a lot of work, and it's not even your main source. So, but okay.
Well,
thank you.
My idea, and I feel pretty confident in this, that the potential income from porn exceeds escorting, and at some point I would like to move away from escorting to a certain degree, not entirely, but to a certain degree I'd like to move away from that, because it is stressful and it is risky, and I do get some good experiences from it, but and it's always nice receiving like a $600 or $2,000 at a time, for just a certain amount of time. But I see the income potential in porn as being higher, and also potentially being more passive. And I mean, I can reach one person at a time with escorting, or potentially I could reach an unlimited number of people through porn. And so that seems to be a better choice to me. And I get to work with more people that I choose and I, appreciate more, or maybe more attracted to, for instance.
Now, obviously you're not just doing porn, you're not just doing escorting, you've got a life, you've got different things going on. You were just out here in LA for the T Awards, so there's so many different distractions in life. In a typical production cycle for you, what you just described, how long will it take you to go from concept in your head of I want to do this scene all the way to I'm now getting money off of this idea that I had?
It depends. It depends on if it's by myself, it could be as easy as one day. If it's with someone else, it could be months of planning if they're traveling or if I'm traveling to them.
And so you've got to have like a pipeline going then of ideas and content, and just kind of while you're doing your editing, you're also continuing to shoot, and you just kind of continue to stagger all of this, correct?
Yeah, in the ideal world, that's the case. It seems to be in a lot of cases, you can get away with the minimum as long as you're consistent and have a volume of content. And what I mean by that is that I don't think you have to be super creative. Maybe switch some outfits around, switch location, like a different corner of your room, try a little bit of different makeup. But if you're doing the same stuff, whether it be, pleasuring yourself, or maybe you found a kink, like a specific niche to hold, zone in on. Maybe you're just doing some stuff for that. You see a lot of successful girls just on their phones, posting from their phones. You don't need a film camera. You don't need a studio. You don't need a huge editing PC. Even though I like to use like DaVinci Resolve for my editing, and I like to do it on PC, generally speaking. But that's because I like the editing aspect of it. If you want it pretty down and dirty, straightforward, and most people, that's all they care for is a minimum, is that they get the visceral content. They can see whatever orifice and thing is going inside an orifice, and the act is being performed. In a lot of cases, that'll be fine, and you can make some money off of it. I can't say from personal experience what the gap or disparity would be between something that was very zoned in and niche and specific to someone, or a certain subgroup of people, versus something more general, like just getting off. I would imagine that there's a little bit more money to be made in this niche because they may be willing to pay a little bit more, but that's not always the case.
Now, I bet this rarely happens to you just because you're such a wonderful performer. You put so much of yourself into your work, but all of a sudden you've put so much work into this thing, you've put it out there, and it gets very little traction, or it bombs, or you're starting to see some negative feedback on it. Like, this is something you've been working on. This is your livelihood. This is your income. Like, how do you deal with the mental health stress and the pressures that kind of come along with this?
I'd say for my entire porn career, most of it, the 3 years I've been doing this, I'd say it's most of my stuff hasn't gotten very much traction. It's been very slow. Okay. And it is really discouraging, especially when you know people that are making maybe $10,000 a month off of just OnlyFans or whatever. And there's a lot of questions like that, kind of like, what am I doing differently from them? What is different? What is, what can I work on? What is different between us? And a lot of times, that comes down to, in my head, that comes down to how they look, maybe their weight or their physical features, and that's really difficult. And as well as like mental health, because I think what I've heard consistently, there's a lot of different ideas of what to do to make yourself succeed in sex work, but consistency is the one thing I've heard from everybody. And I have personal difficulty with consistency because of my own mental health and things I struggle with personally. But so I haven't been able to completely exhaust that sort of, well, you're not being consistent enough or whatever. So it's all these pressures. I really get down on myself a lot, and I'd say what kind of keeps me afloat is it's kind of this idea that it's going to pay off one day, that it's maybe I'll reach a point that it will start making me a decent amount of money. I have friends that have it, it's working for them. I get compliments about how good I look, even if I can't understand them, in my own head. But and then I also talk to friends. I have a regular therapist. I've been seeing a therapist since like middle school, so I've been in and out of therapy. Other like healthy coping skills I do is I exercise. I journal, although not enough. Microdose shrooms occasionally. That helps in social situations and kind of reframes situations. And
absolutely, yeah.
And just that sort of what is it? DBT, or it's either DBT or CBT idea that you can reframe situations.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one interpretation to something that's happened or something you've done or certain situations. You can have different perspectives on stuff, and it's difficult, but like you have the power to change that perspective, even if it's just a little bit, and reframe it to maybe not quite as negative. And that's what I try to do. And I also like over the years, I know I'm going through a list here, but like I'm just like
this
go
is
through
great.
everything.
No, this is great.
Yeah.
We got plenty of
I
time. This is
I
all.
love
I find it
this.
fascinating. This is great. Yeah.
But I've over the years I've realized things that make me uncomfortable almost always, and there's a difference between being uncomfortable versus being traumatized, and it's it can be a very thin line.
Yeah.
But things that make me uncomfortable help me to grow and are net positive in my life. And so either realizing this uncomfortable situation that I can grow in, or even taking a chance on something. Like there's plenty of times I really didn't want to shoot a scene, and I wasn't going to be paid for it, and I wasn't going to make very much money off of it. But I realized unless I put myself out there and gave myself the opportunity to have maybe their fans come over to me, or maybe somebody pick up on the scene that brings in more money and more fans or whatever, if I don't at least get into the ring, so to speak, and put some effort forth and do it, even if I'm uncomfortable, then there's no opportunity for me to grow from that whatsoever. And so I try to do that.
Yeah.
And then taking small breaks helps. I don't do it enough, but I maybe 20 minutes, or if realizing that maybe I'm overwhelmed today and I need to like take a break or something, that can make a big difference. And burnout is serious. It's a serious issue, especially in this industry, because this industry can be very isolating. And I enjoy being my own boss, but that means I can never escape work, and I can never escape. I'm working all the time, almost all the time.
Absolutely.
And then sounds corny, but like the grounding, mindfulness, and breathing exercises definitely help.
At all. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you're like, well, maybe you just need to meditate. Well, yeah, actually, that can kind of help if you do it consistently. And then I try not to look in the mirror too much. As difficult as I see my own image enough, like on the internet and like on my computer from editing and taking photos and stuff like that, that these days, whenever I see myself in the mirror, all I do is pick apart everything I don't like about myself. And so days that I don't look in the mirror as much as days that I do, I generally am feeling a little more positive.
Now, let's just dive into something real quick. So, obviously we're all trans women here. There's the societal pressures of passing, of fitting in, of all this bullshit and everything like that we have to deal with to be identifying inside this societal binary. But in your specific industry, I would imagine there's also certain types of standards and pressures that you feel that can also affect your mental health. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, so I'd say the aesthetic for a very successful trans, adult porn star or whatever, is that close to anorexic skinny, but not anorexic, like the bordering on unhealthy skinny, and have lots of work done, a lot of plastic surgery. I'm not going to name names, but like if you look at the people they keep shooting over and over and over again in the bigger studios, that's their aesthetic. There's some exceptions to that, like some curvier girls, but even those, they always have plastic surgery done. They always have work done, and they always, well, not always, but a lot of times they maybe started and became successful when they were a lot skinnier than they are now.
Yeah.
And personally, I feel that pressure for sure, but also the aesthetic that I am trying to pursue, and I realize this is very much a Western beauty standard of being very thin, but still having curves and having a little bit of muscle tone, being healthy but thin and with a little bit of tone, and like a very symmetrical feminine face
Got
with
it.
sizable
And
breasts
of course,
and big ass.
Yeah.
naturally.
Maybe not too big. But...
What about down there? Is there pressures to, even if you're dysphoric about your own genitalia, is there pressures to be a certain type of way or to look a certain type of way, to perform a certain type of way? Like how does dysphoria, mental health, and performing kind of all go into each other? And how does it affect you?
So the standard when it comes down to that is the whole fetish, the whole niche around trans porn is a girl with a penis, and in almost every case that penis needs to be able to produce some sort of cum or ejaculate. Size doesn't, you see, obviously the bigger the better because it looks better on camera. It's more impressive, and it's like, oh, she was hiding. There's a whole like, oh, she trapped me or whatever. That's kind of like a little subgenre. Is that they're passable? I didn't know she had a dick or whatever. They like the surprise and that kind of excitement or whatever. But also, there's plenty of very successful porn stars that have small dicks, but there's always a pressure to be able to at least get hard and penetrate somebody else, as well as making sure you can produce some sort of cum. Like a lot of studios, they won't pay you if you're not able to come, if you're not able to like come in the session. And so there's a lot of pressure with that. If it makes you so dysphoric that it throws you into like the depth of a depression or something like that, I'd say this is not the industry for you. I personally I get a little dysphoric, but I'm able to kind of compartmentalize that for work, and I love to orgasm, and that's the only way I can orgasm is using my penis. But that said, I do see myself getting bottom surgery at some point, and I'd say really the only thing that's holding me back from that is finances in my work, which is porn and escorting, because I think there's a market for post-op trans girls. However, it's almost completely untapped, and no studio will shoot you if you're post-op, and you're going to have and all the fans you may have had so when people think trans porn, they immediately assume you have a penis, and it's enshrined within society and the culture and stuff like that. And obviously there's trans does not mean trans woman with penis. It's a whole umbrella of things under there. But when it comes to porn, that is generally almost 100% of the time what the consumer immediately goes to. And so I've seen some a lot of post-op girls, the question becomes, well, where do I fit in the adult industry? And because they don't fit in with the trans, the pre-op trans girls, they don't have a dick, and everybody in the industry wants the dick. That's deciding factor, and they don't fit in with the cis industry either because, their pussy is not as stretchable or as perhaps as durable as a cis girl, and maybe it doesn't quite look the same, and they're not genetically female, so there's a lot of prejudice still within the cis side of the industry. So they're kind of marooned off on their own little island. And right now it's it's possible if you have social. I believe it's possible if you have social media savvy and enough willpower that you can make a living as a post-op girl, but it would be on something like camming or perhaps on, OnlyFans or something like that. Not that I make a living on either of those, but but I
And
think
then not
it's
only that too,
there.
but you'd be starting over essentially from scratch
Yeah.
again too, because
Yeah.
this client
Hmm.
base that you've built up is expecting one thing, and while you're the same person, you're delivering the same level of content and everything, they're seeing you as a different
Yeah.
person because they've
Yeah.
fetishized that old person,
Yeah,
or
you
that old
definitely should
version of
expect to
you.
lose
Yeah.
almost, if not nearly, if not all of your fans or whatever that
Right.
you had
Yeah.
before.
It's a
And that's
lot.
got to be a depressing thing to think about when if you've gotten to a point where you have this fan base, this is something that you do
Yeah.
want to do with your life. That's a huge decision then that you have to make with this being essentially your livelihood or a good chunk of it,
Yeah,
you know?
and so that the work holds me back from getting bottom surgery until I have either like a concrete income outside of porn, or if I'm able to build up enough content that I can keep marketing and reselling the same stuff, till I'm dead. Um, it's I'm kind of in a holding pattern till I figure something out.
Yeah.
So we've had a conversation before about like ideally like the next steps for you,
Yeah.
or if you had, if you had an investor, or if you had the ability to kind of like create this kind of ideal
Hmm.
situation for yourself, like where would you like to be going next? What ideas do you kind of have cooking up?
I mean, so directly, while I'm still doing porn, I'd say coming out with
Mhm.
quality like porn DVDs and movies, something that's instead of like maybe a 20-minute scene, it would be like a collection of scenes that maybe have a theme,
Mm,
or even tell a more narrative work, more narrative like fantasy or something like that. Uh,
okay.
Whether it be a certain situation or some sort of like human conflict that gets drawn out. I want to be doing that. I'd like to get a stable income from porn
Yeah.
with minimal upkeep, a stable source of fans, and maybe I'm just, taking a few photos or videos here and there. And then I'd like to, like I said before, start transitioning away from escorting. And at some point, I'd like to be making at least 10K gross a month. And, maybe that means getting into business and doing something outside of porn. But,
Yeah.
once I'd like to own property in LA or somewhere nice in California.
Yeah.
We'd love to
But
have you back out here,
Right
that's
next
for
to
sure.
us.
yeah, that's a dream. I don't know when or if ever I'll reach that, but that's one of my goals. Um,
I too would like to own property in
yeah,
California as well,
yeah.
even though I live here.
Hmm.
Yeah, that'd be
Yes.
nice.
If I can
Um,
convince enough like uh, loan companies to loan me money so that I can uh, even start doing sort of investment properties and leasing out to people, that would be good.
Yeah.
But then also, I'd love to travel the globe. I love motorcycling, and it's a dream of mine to go to Europe and take a motorcycle trip for probably at least a couple months around Europe. I love art and painting. I'd love to get back to painting and being able to sell those. Uh,
Yeah.
I see myself potentially doing some freelance editing or color grading, whether it be freelance or maybe for TV or movie. Um,
mhm.
and I've always wanted to try being an extra for film or TV. And then obviously, like I said, like I would love to be post-op 5 to 10 years from now.
Yeah. Now, the industry, if you could change it, I guess, in a way for yourself or for other
Mhm.
future performers, what would that look like? What changes need to be made in this industry?
Mm. Um, I I think it's hard to say. There's a distinction between changes I'd want to see versus changes that need to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say there's not many stuff that needs to happen because the world is going to keep going regardless of what anybody does, and the industry is going to keep making money regardless of what anybody does. I do think there needs to be less disparity in profit among performers.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be more opportunities for trans performers, whether it be in studios. There's still room for more studios to shoot porn. It's a huge market, huge untapped market, trans porn. It's undercapitalized right now. It's not being completely capitalized. And then so in terms of needs, yeah, there needs to be a better, more impartial way of dealing with social media posts by sex workers and the visibility of those posts. And it could be simple as like some legitimate opacity or opacity to their account removal as well as their like post flagging systems, and like a real way to fight back against that, because there's a lot of people. It's very common for sex workers to have their social media accounts removed, even if they spent last 5 years working on it and they have like 100,000 followers or whatever. Yeah. And it could be something as stupid as like maybe you pissed off a group of people, whether it be like right-wing trolls or whatever, and they just mass reported you, and the system picks up on it regardless of the content and is like, well, if enough people are reporting this, it must be bad, and they'll just close down your account without anything.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then there's banking discrimination.
Yes,
sex workers are always worried about having their bank accounts shut down, and there needs to be anti-discrimination within banking. I mean, it's not even just sex workers though. It's anybody. It's also like anybody who is not wealthy. Discriminate. I'm getting off on a tangent here, but like
it's okay. We got time.
Sex workers are included in this, but I hate the U.S. credit system with a passion. It is the worst, most prejudicial system out there right now. And being a sex worker impacts that because you may not have a reportable, stable income from one source, which is what people want to see. They want to see you have a 9-to-5 job that makes a lot. That's the ideal situation, I think. Or you have a lot of tangible property, whether it be assets in real estate or stocks or whatever that they can leverage. And a lot of sex workers don't have that. Most of them rent. They don't own property. A lot of them aren't wealthy enough to own a stock portfolio, let alone any sort of land or whatever. And so it makes them, in addition to that, they have to worry about customers charging back or reporting them as fraud because they're trying to get scammed out of the money that they rightfully earned. And so banks see that as a risky proposition, and there needs to be protections against sex workers that they can't just have their money taken and their bank accounts shut down, which has happened in a lot of cases, that they'll shut down the bank account and just take the money. They won't return it.
Now,
because it was,
are there any
to them, it was involved in some fraudulent activity or some illegal activity, regardless if there's any evidence or not, because they don't need to provide any evidence, really.
No, not at all. No. Now, along with that and the banking system and everything, I mean, like, how has that affected you personally at this point? Like, what roadblocks are you running up against? What type of tap dancing do you have to do on a daily basis just to keep yourself clean in their eyes, if you will?
Yeah. Well, I definitely have issues with my credit. There's a number of reasons for that, but I just not having a huge amount of income is one of them. And I've been trying to build my credit up, through like a secured card, which has like a $200 limit, but it takes a long time. And a lot of times credit applications are difficult because maybe I've moved around a number of times, or, as trans, you change your name. Well, credit reports don't like that. They may split off and create you two separate credit reports, in which case
under the same social,
and it can take you months of wrangling with the credit bureau to get them to recombine those two credit reports. And until that time happens, you're not able to get an auto loan. You're not able to, get a new credit card. You're not able to be verified for whatever else, because there's so many things that use your credit report and banking history as a measure if you're a good person or if you're trustworthy. It doesn't, none of else matters. But and then outside of that, finding housing is difficult because a lot of times they'll want you to show a stable income. And like in a lot of cases, I don't make 3 to 5 times the rent. Like I said, I'm barely making my rent and bills alone every many months. And there's ways to get around that and help, but it's difficult. It's really difficult, and you need friends and other people, and friends who have businesses to like co-sign or help you with the documentation required for renting out, renting an apartment or whatever.
Sure.
I'm trying to think, what other challenges have I faced? I have to be careful what I say to people, because I don't know how they feel about trans people. I don't know how they feel about sex workers. I'm usually as much as I dislike how tall I am because of various reasons, I think it does provide me with a measure of safety. And so I do feel like I'm a little more free to say just whatever I want. But even then, like if someone has decision-making power over something I need or want, I have to be very careful, what I say around them in order to, like you said, tap the right dance to get what I need, and portray myself in such a way that they're not going to either discriminate against me or inflict violence or whatever else.
Absolutely. I wish I was leaving this more on a happier note, but we're almost out of time here. And I want to do though is I want to give you an opportunity to just kind of like, one, promote the crap out of yourself here so that you have this opportunity, and then 2, talk about any like causes that are important to you or how people can get more involved with helping out individuals that are in this industry that are sex workers, because this is important. As trans people alone, we already know what it's like to be dehumanized, to be thought of as less in society and everything. And let's get real. I mean, like pornography, the adult industry, it's as prolific as it is because people want this industry and they need it in their shadows and behind their closed doors and everything. So how can we help performers? Like, what's the next step that would get us to a better place here?
The first easiest step is make sure you pay for your trans porn. If you like a performer, if you like me, go to my website, buy a subscription, buy some videos, go to ashleyaspen.com and look at all my links, choose one that you like, and, buy a video, or, $16 a month, subscribe to my OnlyFans. But if you really want to help performers out individually, you figure out how they're selling to people one-on-one, because all these companies like OnlyFans takes 20% of profits. Chatterbait takes 50% of profits. Streamate takes around like 70% of the profits.
Wow.
All these companies are doing very little, if any, work, especially OnlyFans, and they're taking a huge amount of money from these performers. So maybe to reach out to them, whether by email or social media or whatever, and be like, hey, how can I buy a video directly from you? And usually it's by like Cash App or Venmo or sometimes PayPal, or whatever. That is the best and most direct way to support a individual performer. Although subscription sites are nice because you can just kind of set it and forget it and come back, like a fridge, and just open up and there's content. But beyond that, if you're a therapist, I would say volunteer for organizations like Pineapple, and they help pay the therapist, but also get trans performers or sex workers in general, help them get therapy for very little, if anything, or for free. They get the therapy through Pineapple, and I think there's other organizations like that, but I can't recall. And then there's also each city usually has some sort of LGBT or trans group that you can volunteer for, or like I know Vegas and LA, they have Suede, and at least Vegas has the Red Umbrella Collective. And volunteering your time for those kind of entities is substantial. But even just liking their posts, commenting on their posts on social media, reposting their stuff, it's a constant battle for visibility within these algorithms of the social media engine, that showing your interest besides just scrolling past and like, oh, that's cool, like actually doing actions on that post makes a difference. Even if you're not able to afford, whatever, that's fine. But there's little things you can do to help support these people and organizations.
Agreed.
One other thing.
Ashley. Oh, yes, please.
Is there one thing I learned through some of these groups I volunteered for is people's rights, free speech, and discrimination is constantly being attacked in the state, federal, and sometimes even the city, centers of legislation and law. And if, as citizens, if we're not constantly fighting back against that, it's a losing battle.
Amen.
You always have to either support, lobbyists for that support LGBT trans rights or sex worker rights, or volunteer yourself and help author bills or talk to your lawmakers. But in general, finding a group to support in that, because it has to be a constant battle against these people that want to destroy the American dream and destroy American rights through right-wing and very conservative legislation.
Absolutely. I'm a huge proponent of being very involved, especially in the local city governments as well too, because that's where those changes are happening, and there's so many ill-informed people about what's going on in their own backyard. So yes, absolutely. Thank you. So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, Ashley, if somebody wanted to work with you directly, if somebody wanted to purchase your content, is the best place to go ashleyaspen.com? Is that going to be the best place to go for them?
That's going to have all the links to my content.
Cool. Okay.
If you want to get in touch with me directly, you can message me. Preferably if you message me on OnlyFans, because then you have a subscription. But otherwise, if you're looking to shoot or whatever else that's maybe business or non-business related, you can try messaging me on my Instagram or my Twitter. Generally, Instagram's gonna be a little better. _Ashley Aspen. And then if you want to book me for stuff, if you're a studio, same thing, social media. But if you're an individual who wants to book me, go to ashleyaspen.com, and then at the very bottom there's a link, something that says something about booking within that website that you can click, and it'll take you to a separate website with details.
Got it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
Well, then that sounds great. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for
Thank
sharing your
you.
story and
Yeah.
being as vulnerable as you are, because I think this is such an important story to tell. I think, trans performers in the adult industry in general, there needs to be more of an effort to humanize and to shed a light on like what's going on in this industry so that we can make it a better place for
Yeah,
everybody. That's,
absolutely.
Yeah.
so
Thank you
thank
for
you for
having
coming
me
on.
so
We
much. I
appreciate it.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
really appreciate having
Now
you.
let's make this episode blow up. It'll be good for both of us,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, please.
All right. Well, thanks. Well, we'll be right back after this. Thanks, Liv. Hi, it's Amber again, and today joining me I have Kelly Viviani from the Loft Hair Studio, and I wanted to bring Kelly on because I want to thank you, Kelly, for donating to our Trans Day of Visibility event that we had at Patty's a couple of weeks ago. You helped us raise a lot of money, so thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been going to see you since the very beginning of my transition when I had a big old bald spot on the back of my head. We bleach the fuck out of my hair every single month, but yet it's still really, really healthy and I absolutely love it. And there's no breakage, no split ends. How do you keep my hair so healthy, Kelly?
I think you have good hair to begin with.
Thank you. I appreciate
um,
that.
just a lot of moisturizing, a lot of Mika products, love a Mika, super
Yes,
moisturizing.
absolutely.
But yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. No, you do an absolutely amazing, amazing job with my hair, and I'm just so thankful. And not only that too, but the salon itself is such a welcoming environment. And even from the very beginning, it was such an amazing experience being trans and going into this very female dominated space and to be so welcoming there. Tell me a little bit about the salon, the ownership, like how you feel about all that as well.
I feel like at the salon, we're like a big family.
Yeah.
Like everybody that comes in, it's welcoming. Even like the vibe of the salon, it's super like laid back. It doesn't feel like super monochromatic. Like, oh, should I sit here? Should I not? No, you can like sit down on the couch. You can pass out on the couch. A lot of guys do when they're waiting for their girlfriends or wives. You know, I think we're just like a big family. We're very welcoming. Like usually there's like that stereotype of like, oh, the girls are bitches and they're gonna fight at the salon and have drama. No, we never had any of that. We're pretty cool, calm, share each other's food. We're fine.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really great environment. And I know that you had mentioned wanting to do something kind of special for our listeners if they decide to book an appointment with you here in Los Angeles. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, so if you book an appointment through me, um, I will include a free little makeover. So
Hmm.
get your hair blown out nice and add some makeup, and you leave the salon looking good. Better make plans that day, like a date night or hang out with the girls.
Absolutely. And you've done up my makeup as well for some of my events along with my hair. So, highly recommend. Kelly is good at both. So, we're going to put Kelly's information there. Best way for everybody to contact you, DM you on Instagram at anything but basic Kelly.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. So, go ahead and DM her at anything but basic Kelly. Go get your hair done, and she'll throw in a free mini makeover. Thank you so much for joining me today, Kelly. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Oh my
Mm,
goodness, that was such a great interview.
yeah.
I loved having Ashley on the show. What do you think
Hmm.
of the interview there, Liv?
I thought the interview went really well. It was
Mm,
a little bit surprising for me. It was very serious, learning the in and outs of the sex industry.
mm,
Um, I feel like I missed out on an opportunity for a question um, that I had, which was hormone cycling. And
yeah,
I know that that's something that's within the industry. And
yeah.
yeah, have you spoken with her about hormone cycling?
Yeah, I had mentioned that we had an opportunity to speak for a little bit in Los Angeles, and that was one of the things
Uh-huh.
that we talked about because I think she had alluded to it that there's a lot of pressure in the industry to have a
Yeah.
visual climax, if you will, so that
Yeah.
you know you're actually displaying your goods on camera and everything. And so and also the ability to be like visually aroused as well too. And to do that, you know, there's, you know, a practice of hormone cycling where they'll actually go off of their HRT for a while, so that they can produce. And I mean, when she told me that personally, I mean, like that just triggered like all sorts of like scary dysphoria inside me. And so I feel for every person that would ever have to even make a decision like that for their own employment, where they would have to you know, do that with their HRT, because that sounds like just a mental nightmare for me personally. And so my heart goes out to every trans, you know, adult entertainer out there that has to do that. That's for sure.
You know, I know I've had like my hormones just switched up, you know, switched around a little bit, up, dropped, and all that is just absolutely, you know, extremely dysphoric, even, you know, when it happens. And so just having to do it voluntarily, I can't even imagine. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, I do want to give a shout out though. So we want to make sure that we are supporting. That's one of the best things that we could possibly do. AshleyAspen.com, _real Ashley Aspen on Instagram. Give her a follow, help promote her stuff. She is an incredible woman, you know, making it out there like we're all trying to. So I think that's about all we've got for today, right, Liv?
Well, yeah, I think so. Why don't you go ahead and take us out?
Perfect. Sounds great. Well, that's all the time we do have for today. I'd like to thank our guest, Ashley Aspen, for joining us on the pod this week. I also want everyone to know that you can find us on Instagram at Out of Our Shell, grab our merch at Etsy at Out of Our Shell, and tune in to our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please help our little podcast grow by liking this episode, sharing it with a friend or two or three. We really appreciate all the support that friends like you provide to us. Or 5, 10, all of them. Share with all your friends. So on behalf of Liv and myself, we'd like to remind you all to follow your joy, because it can never, ever lead you in the wrong direction. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week on Out of Our Shell, the podcast. Bye.
Hey there, come out of your shell. Hey there, come out of your shell.
Don't forget to subscribe.